The wind carries secrets through Blackwater Ridge. I've hiked these mountains for 25 years, mapped every cave, traced every stream. But this season, something's wrong. The birds are silent, no rustling in the brush. Even the pines feel like they're holding their breath. Yesterday, I found a ring of mushrooms near the old quarry, perfectly shaped. At the center, a compass, spinning like mad. When I reached for it, the air went freezing. My breath turned to fog, and August heat still shimmered on the ridge. Nobody's logged this section for weeks, and yet, footprints appear. Fresh, always heading toward the ridge, never back. At night, lights move between the trees. Not flashlights, not fireflies. They float, they watch. Don't follow the lights, she said. And if you hear your name, in the dark, don't answer. Last night, as the mist curled around my cabin, I heard someone whisper mine. Three weeks later, the heat hits me like a physical wall as I step out of the Humvee. Sweat instantly beads across my forehead, trickling down my temples before I can even adjust my cap. The desert stretches out in every direction, an endless sea of golden sand, under a sky so blue it hurts to look at. My boots sink slightly with each step, the sand already finding its way into my socks. I've been in hot zones before, but this is different. The air itself feels heavy, like it's pressing down on us. Major Carter, over here! Dr. Sharif waves from the edge of what appears to be a massive depression in the sand. She's surprisingly energetic despite the blistering heat, her enthusiasm practically radiating off her as I trudge over. My squad follows, equipment jangling against tactical gear. This is it, she says, her eyes bright with academic excitement. Ubar, the Atlantis of the sands. Marco Polo wrote about it as the city of immense wealth, lost to the desert for centuries. The locals believed it was punished by God and swallowed by the sands. I nod, not really caring. Fascinating, Doctor. How long will your team need to secure the artifacts? My job is simple. Protect the archaeologists. Retrieve any items of military significance. Get out. Myths and legends aren't part of my mission parameters. I notice our local guides hanging back, refusing to approach the depression. One of them, an older man with skin like tanned leather, spits into the sand and mutters something in Arabic. What's he saying? I ask our translator. He hesitates. He says this is the Jinn's Gate, a doorway that should remain closed. The translator looks uncomfortable. They say the winds speak here, and those who listen too closely never return. Behind me, Private Ramirez snickers. Spooky desert ghosts, Major. Should we call Ghostbusters? I turn to face my squad, 12 of America's finest soldiers, looking at me with varying degrees of amusement. Listen up. We're not here for ghost stories. We're here to secure this site and assist the archaeological team. Standard protocol, standard formation. This is a military operation, not a campfire. Yet as the words leave my mouth, I feel a peculiar whisper of wind against my neck, cold, despite the desert heat. For just a moment, I could swear it sounded like someone exhaling right behind me. Major, you need to see this. Dr. Sharif's voice crackles through my radio, pulling me away from the perimeter check. The archaeological team has been working for hours, carefully removing layers of sand from what appears to be a massive stone structure. As I approach, I see it. A stone gate, half buried in the sand, its surface covered in symbols I've never seen before. Not hieroglyphics, not cuneiform, not anything I recognize from previous deployments in the region. The stone itself seems to absorb the sunlight rather than reflect it, appearing almost matte black despite the blinding desert sun. "How old is it?" I ask, finding myself speaking in a hushed tone without meaning to. Dr. Sharif shakes her head, running her fingers over the strange inscriptions. "That's just it, we can't tell. The stone doesn't match any local geological formations. And these symbols..." She traces one that looks like a spiral eating itself. "I've never seen anything like them." A sudden gust of wind whips through the excavation site, cold and sharp, impossible for midday in the desert. The sand swirls around our ankles, and for a moment, I swear the patterns it forms match the symbols on the gate. My radio crackles to life. "Come back." A voice whispers through the static, too faint to recognize. "Report. Who's transmitting?" I bark into my radio. No response, just more static, and what sounds like distant, indecipherable whispers. Private Ramirez, standing nearby, fiddles with his own radio. "Just interference, sir. Desert plays hell with comms." But I notice his hands trembling slightly as he turns the volume down, his earlier bravado diminished. "Keep working," I tell the archaeological team, my voice firmer than I feel. "And get me a translation of those symbols ASAP." As I walk away, I catch Dr. Sharif staring at the gate with an expression I can't quite place. Not just academic curiosity, but something closer to dread. For the first time, I wonder if there might be something to the locals' fears after all. But that's ridiculous. I'm a soldier, not some superstitious civilian. Whatever this place is, whatever secrets it holds, they have rational scientific explanations. They have to, don't they? Night in the desert brings an eerie transformation. The scorching heat vanishes, replaced by a bone-deep chill that seeps through our thermal gear. I sit outside my tent, staring at the excavation site illuminated by our portable floodlights. Something feels wrong. The desert is too quiet. No distant animal calls. No rustling of night creatures. Not even the constant whisper of sand moving in the breeze. Just stillness. Complete and absolute. "Sir?" Sergeant Miller approaches, his rifle clutched a little too tightly. Michaels thinks he saw something moving near the gate. "What kind of something?" I ask, already reaching for my sidearm. "He couldn't say, sir, just a shadow, moving where it shouldn't." I grab my flashlight and follow Miller to the perimeter. Michaels stands rigid, pointing toward the darkness beyond our lights. "There, sir, I saw it right there." I sweep the area with my light. Nothing but sand and stone. "Probably just shadows from the equipment," I say, not entirely believing it myself. A sharp buzz cuts through the air as one of our floodlights flickers and dies. Then another, and another. Within moments, half our lights are out, plunging sections of the camp into darkness. "Check the generators," I order. But even as the words leave my mouth, I notice my GPS watch flickering, the display showing coordinates that keep changing, numbers spinning wildly. "Major Carter?" A voice crackles through my radio, making me jump. "This is Dr. Moore. The cameras in the excavation tent just stopped working, all at once." Something cold settles in the pit of my stomach. Military-grade equipment doesn't just fail like this. Not all at once. Not without reason. Then, cutting through the stillness, Ramirez. A whisper. So faint, so distant, like someone speaking his name from the bottom of a well. I spin toward Ramirez, but he's 20 feet away, checking the generator. He couldn't have spoken, and the voice on my radio, it didn't sound like anyone on our team. "Everyone check in," I command, suddenly needing to account for every person. "Right now," my team responds, one by one, all present. But there's an edge to their voices now, a tension that wasn't there before. They feel it too, the wrongness of this place, "It's just equipment failure," I announce, speaking as much to myself as to them. "Probably sand in the machinery. Moore, Henderson, run diagnostics. The rest of you, standard watch rotation. I don't want anyone wandering off alone." But as I return to my tent, the silence of the desert seems to press against me, watching, waiting. I check my sidearm twice before lying down, telling myself it's just standard protocol. Not fear. Definitely not fear. In the distance, just at the edge of hearing, I swear I can hear something whisper my name. I jolt awake, disoriented. The tent canvas above me ripples in the morning breeze. Something feels off, but I can't place it. Grabbing my boots, I step outside and freeze. The sand around our camp is pristine, untouched. Not a single footprint disturbs its surface. Impossible. We've been trampling this area for days. "What the hell?" I mutter, staring at the unmarked sand surrounding my tent. It's as if we were dropped from the sky, leaving no trace of our movement. "Major!" Miller rushes toward me, his face pale. "Dawson's gone." My stomach drops. "What do you mean gone?" "His tent's empty. Bedroll untouched. No one on night watch saw him leave." Miller's voice trembles slightly. It's like he just vanished. We gather the squad, and no one remembers seeing Dawson after dinner. His gear remains in his tent, arranged too neatly, like a display. I organize search parties, standard protocol for a missing man, but unease crawls up my spine like a centipede. "Spread out, grid pattern, keep radio contact at all times," I order. The search begins, but nothing about this desert makes sense anymore. Rock formations I'd used as landmarks yesterday are simply gone, or stand in different positions. The distant mountains seem closer than before. The sun moves too quickly across the sky. My radio crackles. "Hey Miller, did you grab my extra canteen?" It's Dawson's voice, casual, normal. We all freeze. "Dawson, where are you? Report your position." I bark into the radio. No response, just static. "I heard him," Miller whispers. That was Dawson. 10 minutes later, the radio crackles again. Dawson, responding to a question no one asked, talking about the weather. It's as if he's having a completely normal day with us, except he's nowhere to be found. Dr. Evelyn approaches, her face grim. "Major, I've been studying the gate inscriptions. I think I've partially decoded them." She hesitates. "They're a warning about trespassers in the domain of the jinn." I want to dismiss her to cling to rational explanations. Missing soldier, desert mirages, radio interference. But the pristine sand, the shifted landscape, Dawson's disembodied voice, none of it makes sense. The jinn were believed to be beings that could alter reality. She continues. The inscription warns that those who enter their realm uninvited become disconnected. Disconnected? My mouth feels dry. From reality. From time. From existence itself. I stare at her, fighting the cold fear creeping through me. This isn't happening. Can't be happening. There has to be a logical explanation, doesn't there? Dawson was never here. Private Henderson's words drop like stones into still water. We all stare at him. "What are you talking about?" I demand. "He's been with us since Fort Bragg." Henderson shakes his head stubbornly. "No, sir. There was no Private Dawson assigned to this mission. Never was." "That's bullshit," Ramirez snaps. "He bunked next to me on the transport." "Who bunked next to you?" Henderson asks, genuinely confused. The argument erupts, half the squad insisting they remember Dawson clearly. His Brooklyn accent, his collection of poker chips, the scar on his left hand, while others swear they've never heard of him. I check the mission roster. Dawson's name is there. Then I blink, and it's gone. I stare at the paper, wondering if the heat is finally getting to me. My frustration builds, as the third search party returns empty-handed. The ruins seem to swallow our shouts, the sand erasing our presence as soon as we move. I retreat to my tent to radio base camp, but only static answers. As I adjust the dial, the static shifts, forming what sounds like whispers. I lean closer, straining to hear.
David.
My name, barely audible. Then again,
David Carter.
I drop the radio like it's burned me, because I recognize the voices. Johnson, Patel, Rivera, my squad from Kandahar. All dead 3 years ago, in an ambush I survived. Their faces flash before me, translucent like heat mirages, mouths moving in words I can't hear. I blink hard, and they're gone. Just the empty tent, the useless radio, the distant sound of my current squad, arguing about a man who may never have existed. Dr. Evelyn finds me like this, staring at nothing. She enters without asking, her academic composure cracking. I have translated more of the inscriptions, she says, voice low. The jinn don't kill, Major. They erase. They alter the very fabric of reality around their victims. That's impossible, I say automatically, but the conviction in my voice sounds hollow even to me. The texts say they start by removing footprints, she continues. Then they make the landscape shift. Then they take someone, erase them so completely that soon, no one remembers they existed at all. Just like Dawson. Just like the missing footprints. Just like the shifting desert. This is a military operation, I say, my voice harder than necessary. We deal in facts, not folklore. We're staying put, maintaining order, and waiting for extraction. This is just, what? Mass hallucination? Desert madness? A misunderstanding. Dr. Evelyn looks at me with something between pity and fear. There won't be an extraction, Major. Not unless we leave now. But even as she speaks, I wonder if there's anywhere left to go. If the desert itself isn't already changing around us, erasing paths as soon as we make them, leading us in endless circles around the gate. Night falls too quickly, the sun seeming to plummet below the horizon. The temperature drops unnaturally, our breath forming clouds in the desert air. Something is very wrong with this place, and I can no longer deny it. Our equipment continues to malfunction. Compasses spin wildly, GPS units display coordinates that would place us in the middle of the ocean, and watches run backward, then forward at random intervals. The radios work only to transmit Dawson's increasingly distorted voice, or sometimes the whispers of my dead squad. Major. Ramirez appears at my side, his normally cocky demeanor replaced by tightly controlled fear. I heard Dawson just now, not on the radio, right behind me. I turned and he swallows hard. Just sand, moving sand like something had just been there. I nod, no longer questioning these impossibilities. The rational part of my brain still searches for explanations. Desert madness, hallucinogenic spores, carbon monoxide from the generators. But every theory feels like grasping at straws. The camp lights flicker, plunging us into darkness for one terrible second. In that moment of blackness, we all see it. A figure standing at the edge of camp, tall, unnaturally still, watching us. When the lights return, there's nothing there but shifting sand. We need to leave, I announce, finally giving voice to what we're all thinking. Pack essential gear only. We move out at first light. It won't work, Dr. Evelyn says quietly. The Jinn's gate doesn't just open into our world. It distorts everything around it. We have to try, I insist, clinging to what little control I have left. North to the extraction point, 20 miles across open desert. We can make it. But even as I say it, I realize I can no longer tell which way is north. The stars above us are wrong, constellations I've never seen, patterns that shift when I try to focus on them. It's as if we're no longer on Earth at all, but somewhere between. Dr. Evelyn grabs my arm, her fingers digging in with surprising strength. If we don't leave now, we may never leave at all. The texts say the gate only remains open for 3 nights. After that? What? I demand. After that, we become part of this place. Forever. A low moan of wind sweeps through the camp, carrying with it what sounds like distant laughter. The sand at our feet stirs, forming small spirals that echo the patterns on the gate. I look at my squad, their faces tight with fear, waiting for me to make this right somehow. I'm their commanding officer. I'm supposed to have answers. But the desert has stripped away my certainty, along with our footprints, leaving only one terrible truth. Something is hunting us, and I don't know how to fight an enemy that can rewrite reality itself. The sun rises from the wrong direction. No one comments on it. Maybe they don't notice, or maybe, like me, they're afraid to acknowledge just how wrong things have become. We abandon half our equipment and move out, a ragged line of soldiers trudging across the sand toward what should be north, what I hope is north. We've been walking for 2 hours, Miller says, checking his watch. We should have reached the ridge by now. I nod, saying nothing. There's no point mentioning that his watch has been running backward for the last 30 minutes. Ramirez, walking point, suddenly stops. Sir? He calls back, voice tight. You should see this. 20 feet ahead stands a large rock formation, its surface dark against the sand. Ramirez takes out his combat knife and scratches a deep X into the stone. Just to be sure, he mutters. We continue walking. The sun crawls across the alien sky too quickly, shadows spinning around us like clock hands. An hour passes. 2. The desert stretches endlessly. And then, no, Ramirez whispers, no fucking way. The same rock formation stands before us, the X scratched into its surface pristine and fresh, as if we've walked in a perfect circle, despite maintaining a straight line. That's impossible, Henderson says, the words hollow. We try again. Different direction. Same result. The gate always looms on the horizon, no matter which way we turn. Like a focal point, the desert won't let us escape. I stare up at the sky, and my blood runs cold. The stars are visible despite the daylight, but they're all wrong. Constellations I've never seen, patterns that seem to shift when I look directly at them. It's as if we're not on Earth anymore, but caught between worlds. Major. Harris approaches, his posture stiff. I was thinking we should try heading east instead of... He stops mid-sentence, looks confused, then continues. I was thinking we should try heading east instead of... He stops again, blinking rapidly. Harris. I step toward him. I was thinking we should try heading east instead of... The exact same intonation, the same gesture with his hand. He doesn't seem to realize he's repeating himself. Miller grabs my arm. He did this earlier, sir. Said the same thing about the water rations, word for word, 3 times in a row. Didn't remember doing it. Time is slipping, folding in on itself. Reality is becoming unstable. And all I can think is that we need to get back to the gate, not to escape through it, but because it's the only constant in this shifting nightmare. We head back to camp, I order, trying to sound confident. Regroup, reconsider our options. No one argues. They're looking to me for certainty, for the reassurance that we'll get through this. But the truth is, I'm as lost as they are, caught in a trap I can't see or fight, watching reality unravel around us. My eyes snap open. I don't remember falling asleep. The tent canvas above me ripples in a wind that feels too deliberate, like something breathing. My watch reads 3:17 a.m., but I don't trust it anymore. Nothing here is trustworthy. Not time, not space, not even memory. Something compels me to step outside. The camp is silent, everyone in their tents. The gate looms in the excavation pit, its black stone gleaming under starlight. I look down and freeze. Footprints. My footprints circling my tent dozens of times, creating a spiral pattern that mimics the symbols on the gate. But I haven't left my tent since we returned to camp. My heart pounds against my ribs. I follow the footprints, feeling like a man in a dream. They lead away from camp, toward a small dune I don't remember seeing before. Something gleams in the sand. Metal. I dig, fingers scrabbling through cold sand, until I uncover a weathered metal box. Military issue. Inside is a logbook, its pages yellow with age. I open it, and my blood turns to ice water. My handwriting fills the pages. My words, my log entries, dated 50 years ago. June 7th, 1973. Third escape attempt failed. Same result. We always return to the gate. Ramirez disappeared today. Others claim they don't remember him. It's happening again. June the 10th, 1973. The djinn reset the loop, everything back to the beginning. But we carry fragments of memory. How many times have we done this? How many versions of ourselves are trapped here? June 15th, 1973. Dr. Moore's theory. The gate doesn't just trap us. It exists outside normal time. Each loop isn't a repetition. It's a different timeline, all happening simultaneously. We're not just trapped in a place. We're trapped in a moment, stretched infinitely. I slam the book shut, hands shaking. This isn't possible. I was born in 1985. These entries can't exist, yet the evidence sits in my hands, undeniable. My handwriting, my tactical assessments, my growing desperation as I realized there was no escape. I returned to camp in a daze. Harris sits by the dead fire pit, staring at nothing. Harris? I approach carefully. He looks up, eyes unfocused. Have we had this conversation before? He asks, voice hollow. What do you mean? I remember you asking me that, and me saying this, and you saying what you're about to say, over and over. He laughs, a broken sound. We're caught in a loop, aren't we? How many times have we done this? How many times have we died here? The question hangs in the air, unanswerable. Because the truth is worse than being lost in the desert. We're lost in time itself, fragments of ourselves scattered across endless iterations of the same moment, forever approaching but never reaching escape. The radio crackles to life without warning. My own voice emerges from the static.
Perimeter secure. All units report.
My voice, my cadence, giving orders I don't remember speaking. I stare at the radio, paralyzed. The others look at me, then at the radio, confusion and fear etched on their faces. That's you, sir, Miller whispers unnecessarily. I grab the radio. Who is this? Identify yourself. Only static answers. Then my voice again. Maintain position. The gate is active. Do not approach without authorization. Orders I never gave. A mission I don't remember. Yet, it's unmistakably me. Ramirez snaps. He grabs his rifle and breaks into a run, heading away from camp, away from the gate, away from this nightmare. Ramirez, I shout. Get back here. That's an order. He doesn't slow down. We watch him sprint across the sand, a desperate bid for freedom. He makes it perhaps 50 yards before nothing. No flash of light. No supernatural event. He simply vanishes between one step and the next. There and then gone. Not even a footprint left behind. Silence falls over the remaining squad. No one speaks. What is there to say? We just watched a man erase himself from existence. I walk numbly to the edge of the excavation pit, staring down at the gate. My reflection appears in a small pool of water gathered at its base, but something's wrong. My reflection doesn't move when I move. It just stares back, mouth curved in a smile I'm not wearing. I stumble backward. The others are too lost in their own fear to notice my discovery. The water shouldn't be there. We're in a desert, and there's been no rain. Yet there it is, still and dark as a mirror. The wind picks up, bringing with it a chorus of whispers. My name repeated over and over, not in threat but in expectation, as if the jinn, whatever they are waiting for me to understand something. The sand beneath our feet begins to shift, not blown by the wind, but moving with purpose, forming intricate patterns. The same symbols from the gate, writing themselves across the desert floor. A message, a key. If only I could read it. I step forward, trying to make sense of the patterns, when everything goes black. Not darkness, blackness, as if reality itself has been switched off. For one terrible moment, I feel nothing, hear nothing, am nothing. Then sensation returns. I'm still in the desert, the gate still looms, but something fundamental has changed. I know, with absolute certainty, that we will never leave this place. I find myself at the gate, fingers tracing the symbols carved into the black stone. They feel warm beneath my touch, pulsing with a rhythm like a heartbeat. How long have I been standing here? Minutes? Hours? Days? Time has no meaning anymore. The patterns seem familiar now, as if I've traced them 1,000 times before. Perhaps I have. Perhaps I've been here, doing this exact thing, in countless iterations of this moment, like reading the same page of a book over and over, never turning to the next chapter. Major Carter? Dr. Moore approaches, her clipboard clutched to her chest. I've been analyzing the soil samples from around the... She stops mid-sentence. Her form wavers like a mirage, becoming transparent. I reach out, but my hand passes through her shoulder. She looks down at herself in confusion. What's happening to me? Her voice sounds distant, underwater. Dr. Moore. I start, but don't know what to say. How do you tell someone they're being erased from existence? She flickers once more, then simply isn't, gone between one blink and the next. I turn to call for help, but no one reacts. The remaining team continues their tasks as if nothing happened, as if Dr. Moore was never here. Did anyone see? I begin, then stop. Their blank expressions tell me everything. They don't remember her. Just like Dawson. Just like Ramirez. Erased, not just from this place, but from memory itself. I stumble back to my tent, frantically reaching for my mission log. I need to record what happened, leave some evidence that they existed. But when I open it, every page is blank. Not empty. Blank. As if the paper itself rejects the ink, refuses to hold the record of our time here. My past is disappearing, unwinding like a spool of thread. Soon, I fear, there will be nothing left of David Carter at all. The whispers grow louder, surrounding me. Unlike before, they no longer sound like my dead squad or vanished team members. Now they sound like my own voice, echoing from different times, different iterations, all converging on this moment. The gate is not a door. My own voice whispers from the air around me. It's a mirror. And suddenly, I understand. The Jinn's gate doesn't lead anywhere. It reflects ourselves back at us, trapped between moments, between realities. We are our own ghosts, haunting ourselves across the fractures in time. The camp is disintegrating. Equipment vanishes when no one is looking. Tents collapse into sand. The very fabric of this place is coming undone, or perhaps was never truly here to begin with. I wander away from what remains of the camp, drawn to a dune I haven't noticed before. The sand shifts beneath my feet, revealing something buried, the glint of metal. Military gear, half buried, worn by time and elements. My heart pounds as I dig, uncovering a helmet. Standard issue, but weathered in a way that would take decades, not days. Inside, scratched into the liner, MAG D. Carter, my helmet, but older than it should be, ancient almost. Nearby, partially exposed by the wind, a set of dog tags catches the light. I brush the sand away, already knowing what I'll find. Carter, David J. My serial number, my blood type. But the metal is worn thin. The stamping faded like an artifact from another century. I scramble through the sand, finding more evidence. Pieces of a camp identical to ours, but decayed, as if it's been here for generations. The same equipment, the same configuration, buried under years of shifting sands. The truth crashes over me like a wave. We haven't just been here before. We've always been here. Trapped in a loop that spans, not days, but decades, centuries perhaps. Each iteration believing they're the first. Each one destined to fade, to be buried, to become the archaeological curiosity for the next version of ourselves to discover. The whispering stops. The desert falls absolutely silent, as if holding its breath, waiting. I return to the gate, drawn by some inexorable force. The inscriptions glow faintly now, pulsating with internal light. I understand them suddenly. Not their literal meaning, but their purpose. They're not a warning. They're a record, a tally of all who have been caught here. All the versions of us that have lived and died in this liminal space. The stars above shift again, realigning into constellations that feel right, familiar. The desert is still, patient. I know what I must do. I gather our remaining records, maps, mission logs, coordinates, anything that ties us to the world outside. With trembling hands, I burn them, watching as the papers curl and blacken, erasing the evidence of our existence here. As the last document burns to ash, the sand beneath my feet shifts. The stars above freeze in their dance. The desert feels expectant. The team is gone. I don't remember them leaving, being taken, or fading away. They're simply not here anymore. Only I remain, standing before the gate as the desert stretches endlessly around me. I feel oddly calm now. The fear has burned away, leaving only clarity. I understand what the Jinn's Gate is, what it has always been. Not a portal to another world, but a fracture in reality itself. A place where time folds back on itself, creating endless reflections. We were never meant to leave because we never truly arrived. We have always been here. We'll always be here, caught in the eternal moment where past and future converge. My dog tags feel heavy around my neck, the last tangible proof that David Carter ever existed. I remove them slowly, turning them over in my palm. The metal catches the starlight, gleaming like a signal. I let them fall from my hand. They sink into the sand, disappearing from view, from reality, from memory. The Jinn whisper once more, but now I recognize it not as a threat, but as gratitude. They are not malevolent entities, but guardians of this place where realities intersect, this wound in the fabric of the world. They didn't trap us here. We trapped ourselves through our own arrogance, our refusal to heed warnings, our belief that we could bend this ancient power to our will. The wind picks up, swirling around me. I close my eyes, feeling the sand against my skin, hearing the whispered thanks of entities beyond human understanding. I surrender not to defeat, but to acceptance. This was always meant to be. I was always meant to be here. The last witness, the one who finally understands. The world goes dark, not violently, not in terror, but gently, like falling asleep after a long, exhausting day. The desert reclaims itself. The gate stands eternal, waiting for the next iteration, the next loop, The next version of ourselves who will discover it anew. And somewhere, in the space between moments, Major David Carter finally finds peace. The desert wind scours the empty excavation site, erasing the last traces of our presence. The gate stands alone, ancient and patient, as if nothing ever happened here. Time passes, a day, a year, a century. In the desert, such distinctions mean little. The rumble of engines breaks the silence. A convoy of Humvees approaches through the golden haze, military precision in their formation. They stop at a respectable distance, dust billowing around their wheels, before settling into the endless sand. Captain Lawson steps out, his boots crunching on terrain that feels both alien and strangely familiar. The heat hits him immediately, beating sweat across his forehead as he adjusts his cap. "Spread out," he orders. "Establish a perimeter. I want this site secured before the archaeological team arrives." His squad deploys with practiced efficiency, checking the area, setting up equipment. Everything by the book, just as they've been trained, just as I once did. "Sir?" Private Wilson calls from the edge of a large depression in the sand. "You should see this." Lawson approaches, his gaze falling on what appears to be a massive stone structure, half buried in the sand. Black stone that seems to absorb the sunlight rather than reflect it. "That's it," he says, not sure why the words feel so familiar on his tongue. "The gate." "The what, sir?" Wilson asks. Lawson blinks, confused by his own certainty. "The structure. The one in the briefing." Wilson nods, but his expression betrays doubt. There was no specific structure mentioned in their briefing, just coordinates, a mission to secure an archaeological site of potential military significance. Standard procedure. Private Menendez fiddles with the radio, trying to establish contact with base camp. The static crackles, punctuated by what sounds like whispers, too faint to make out, but unmistakably human. "Comms are spotty, sir," he reports. "Must be the terrain." Lawson nods, a cold sensation crawling up his spine, despite the blistering heat. He scans the horizon, eyes narrowing at the distant mountains that somehow seem both too close and too far away. "Sir." Another call, this time from Sergeant Rivera. "Found something." A small metal box, half buried in the sand, weathered by time and elements. Military issue, but old, decades old by the look of it. Lawson kneels beside it, hesitating before flipping the latch. Inside lies a mission log, its pages yellowed and brittle. When he opens it, sand spills from between the pages, as if the desert itself had been reading its contents. "Weird," Rivera mutters. "Looks like someone was here before us." No mention of another operation in the briefing. Lawson nods absently, his attention caught by the first legible entry. Day 1. Arrived at the excavation site. Dr. Sharif says this place is called Ubar, the Atlantis of the Sands. Local guides seem afraid. Something about a jinn's gate. Standard superstition, nothing to worry about. The handwriting looks oddly familiar. The wind picks up suddenly, cold despite the desert heat. For just a moment, it sounds like someone exhaling right behind him. Evening falls over the camp, the sky darkening too quickly, as if time itself is rushing forward. Lawson sits alone, the recovered mission log open in his lap, a flashlight illuminating pages he can't stop reading. Day 3. Equipment failure across the board. GPS malfunctioning. Radios picking up strange transmissions. Dawson went missing today. The others claim they don't remember him. Am I losing my mind? Day 7. The gate is not a door, it's a mirror. We've been here before, all of us, trapped in a loop that spans not days but decades, centuries perhaps. Lawson turns the brittle page and his blood runs cold. The handwriting, he recognizes it now. It's his own. Not similar, not reminiscent, but identical to the way he forms each letter, each loop and curve. But that's impossible. He's never been here before. Has he? The final entry stops mid-sentence. I understand now. We were never meant to leave because we never truly arrived. We have always been here. Will always be here. Caught in the eternal moment where past and future. Captain. Private Wilson approaches, his figure silhouetted against the camp lights. You need to see this. Lawson follows him to the perimeter. The squad stands in a loose circle, staring at the sand. Footprints, dozens of them, have appeared around the camp. Perfect circular patterns that no human could have made without being noticed. They weren't there 10 minutes ago, Sergeant Rivera says, voice tight. No one's been out here. The desert stretches silent around them, watching with ancient patience. Sir. Menendez holds up his watch. My watch is running backward. Lawson checks his own. The second hand ticks counterclockwise, time unwinding itself. The GPS units display coordinates that would place them in the middle of the ocean. The compasses spin wildly, finding north everywhere and nowhere. Something's wrong with this place, Wilson whispers, giving voice to what they all feel. Back in his tent, Lawson stares at the mission log, comparing his own handwriting with that in the journal. The radio beside him crackles to life without warning. Come back. A voice whispers through the static. Who's transmitting? He demands. No response. Just more static, and what sounds like distant, indecipherable whispers. He steps outside, drawn by some invisible force toward the excavation site. The gate gleams under starlight, the symbols on its surface seeming to shift when he's not looking directly at them. For a moment, he sees someone standing there, a figure in military fatigues, watching him from beside the gate. He blinks, and the figure is gone, but something remains in the sand. Dog tags, glinting in the moonlight. He picks them up, brushing away the sand. The name stamped into the metal makes his heart stop. Lawson, Michael A. His name, his blood type, his service number. The desert wind moans, a sound almost like laughter. Around him, the stars are wrong, constellations he's never seen, patterns that shift when he tries to focus on them. Private Wilson appears at his side, his face pale in the moonlight. Sir, he says, voice barely audible. We've been here before, haven't we? And Lawson knows, with sudden terrible certainty, that they have. Many times. We'll be here again. Are always here, caught in the fracture between moments. The wind picks up, and he hears his own voice carried on it, a whisper from another time. The gate is not a door. It's a mirror. The camp stands empty. Tents flutter in the desert wind, equipment abandoned. No footprints mar the pristine sand. It's as if the squad was never here at all. The gate remains, black stone gleaming under a sun that moves too quickly across the alien sky. Time passes strangely here. A minute, a decade, a century. In the space between realities, such distinctions have no meaning. The mission log lies open on the sand, its pages fluttering in the breeze. The last entry remains unfinished, the handwriting trailing off into nothingness, as if the writer simply ceased to exist mid-thought. Radio static breaks the silence, a transmission from nowhere to no one. This is Captain Lawson. We've secured the site, awaiting further instructions. A pause. The locals call it the Jinn's Gate. Just superstition. Nothing to worry about. The voice repeats, distorting slightly with each iteration. We've secured the site, awaiting further instructions. Then fainter. We've been here before, haven't we? And finally, barely audible. We've always been here. The transmission cuts to static, then silence. The desert reclaims the camp. Sand covers the abandoned equipment, erasing all evidence of human presence. The gate stands eternal, patient, waiting. In the distance, a heat mirage shimmers, the faint outline of vehicles approaching. Another convoy, another team, another iteration of an endless cycle. The sand shifts, forming intricate patterns, the same symbols carved into the gate, writing themselves across the desert floor. A message, a warning, a welcome. The jinn whisper, their voices like the wind itself. The gate opens, the gate closes, the gate remains. And somewhere, in the space between moments, the echo of those who were here before, who will be here again, who have always been here. We've been here before. We've been here before. We've been. The desert falls silent, waiting. The cycle begins again.